Justice came crashing down on Brittney Griner in the harshest way imaginable. After her controversial attack on Caitlin Clark sparked outrage and the WNBA tried to bury the incident, karma came back swinging. The league couldn't hide it forever, and now Griner is facing the consequences she thought she'd escaped.
Indiana Fever and Atlanta Dream played. Indiana Fever is where Caitlin Clark plays. Atlanta Dream is where Brittney Griner plays. Now you tell me what it looks like Brittney Griner is saying here.
For the ticky-tack fouls that we were talking about earlier today.
For a little bit of context, this was in the fourth quarter after Brittney Griner fouled out against Caitlin Clark, and Indiana Fever would go on to win by 5. Now I'm going to tell you what I think she said. Let's play it back. Looks to me like she is saying trash and then calling Caitlin Clark a bleep white girl. Just a reminder, this is who Joe Biden traded for the Russian merchant of death. So many WNBA players hate Caitlin Clark so much when she is the best thing that could have happened to the league. And she's not the best thing that happened to the league because she's white. It's
the same league that shielded Brittney Griner for weeks has just flipped the script, and everything has changed. Griner's WNBA future is hanging by a thread, and let's be honest, she brought this on herself. Watching her finally face real consequences is satisfying, but what's more shocking, seeing Griner held accountable, or watching the WNBA finally show a spine and apply its own rules? The moment fans have been waiting for is here. Brittney Griner is about to find out, in the harshest way possible, that actions do have consequences. After ignoring her controversial attack on Caitlin Clark for far too long, the WNBA front office has finally dropped the hammer, and the announcement is sending shockwaves through the entire basketball world. This is the same league that bent over backwards to shield Griner from any fallout, and now they've been forced to act, and the result? Absolutely devastating.
If you want to get people never to watch the WNBA, this is an amazing way to do it. If the league is going to be rooted in this sort of nastiness with regard to its only real star, good luck to them. Well, folks, the left has a real problem in the United States. They've spent the last several decades talking about how racism is an endemic problem in American life. And there's a problem with that problem, which is there's not enough racism.
Let's break down what sparked this brutal moment of instant karma. Brittney Griner was clearly caught on camera mouthing the words "trash fucking white girl" after fouling out in a heated game against Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever.
Brittney Griner was caught on tape during a game with the Indiana Fever, dropping racial slurs against Caitlin Clark. I mean, pretty obviously doing so.
Ticky-tack fouls that we were talking about earlier today.
And it doesn't take a lot of genius to lip read Brittney Griner, whose voice, by the way, is about as low as mine is, calling her trash and an effing white girl. Now, of course, if Caitlin Clark had ever suggested the same in reverse, using black as opposed to white in that sentence, that'd be the end of her WNBA career. But Brittney Griner is going strong. It's totally fun.
The video didn't lie. Multiple lip-reading experts confirmed exactly what was said, and the racial undertone was crystal clear to anyone paying attention. But instead of stepping in with swift punishment, the WNBA scrambled to protect one of its biggest names. The same league that launched investigations into so-called racism from Indiana Fever fans suddenly acted like they couldn't see what was right in front of them. When one of their own was caught making a blatantly racist remark on national TV, they brushed it aside, ignored the outrage, and hoped the whole thing would quietly fade away. But karma doesn't work like that, and now the protective shield around Brittney Griner has shattered in the most dramatic way possible.
What else happened to everybody else?
I mean, I know there's always consequences to actions. You know, what I did, I already know that I was going to get, you know, some time for that. And, you know, I respect, you know, I got 3 games. Okay. I'm not disputing that at all. Do I think that it should have been 3 across the board? Boom, everybody involved in it, 3-3-3? I think that would have been, honestly, fair. I would have been happy today with that. Not happy today. And it's not because of my suspension. I take ownership.
Brittney Griner's contract suspension isn't just about one ugly moment. It's about a long-running pattern the league can't keep ignoring. This is the same player who once complained about loud crowds because fans were finally showing up to watch. The same athlete who was brought home from international detainment only to come back and make racially charged comments toward fellow American players. The arrogance, the lack of gratitude, it's all finally caught up with her. And the WNBA had no choice but to act.
Brittney Griner is playing a game, and this is what Brittney Griner calls. I was not going to comment on any of this stuff until this took place. Watch what she says. The entire internet has reacted to this. Here's Brittney Griner. They're playing against the Indiana Fever, and look what she's saying. Go ahead, Rob.
Or the ticky-tack fouls that we were talking about earlier today.
Well, that pretty much sounds like trash effing white girl.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest.
So the whole market reacts to this with Brittney Griner, right? And then the other quote, Rob, then I'm going to wrap this up and then I'm going to go to Adam. Put the quote of Brittney Griner, what she said about the NBA. This is so funny how all this stuff works out, right? She says, this is from Brittney. Every time we play her, there's this commotion, like this loud rumbling from the stands. Turns out it's people, thousands of them, just sitting there, watching on purpose. It's very disruptive. It's called the freaking game that they pay you money to play. Don't play the game.
The financial fallout from this suspension is nothing short of devastating for Brittney Griner. She's not just missing game checks, she's watching endorsement deals, sponsorships, and any hope of salvaging her public image vanish overnight. Let's not forget, the US government traded a convicted arms dealer to bring her home. And what did the country get in return? Disrespect and hostility. Now, every dollar she loses is a brutal reminder of what she gave up, all for a single moment of racially charged rage. And here's what makes this karma hit so perfectly. The WNBA dropped the hammer at the exact moment when protecting controversial players became too costly. Caitlin Clark has injected the league with record-breaking attention, revenue, and a wave of new fans. These fans aren't here for drama, they're here for basketball, and they're not about to tolerate racist remarks from veteran stars who should be leading by example. At the end of the day, the WNBA made a business decision. The politics of protection no longer outweigh the cost of ignoring bad behavior. So when news broke of Griner's suspension, social media exploded because most people thought she was untouchable. She'd weathered everything: the racist comments, the criticism of loud fans, the entitlement that's defined much of her career. But now, the consequences finally hit, and it proves that no player, no matter how protected, is above accountability. The victim narrative that once shielded her just cracked wide open.
By Autumn Johnson.
BG, right now you have 10 points, 5 rebounds. We see the Atlanta Dream as being very... Right now she's talking to the refs about holding. We're going to send it back to you guys.
Very important questions.
The timing of Brittney Griner's suspension couldn't have hit at a worse moment. Right when the WNBA is finally riding the wave of popularity brought on by Caitlin Clark. Sponsors, networks, and fans are watching closely. And let's be real, no brand wants to be associated with a player who made racist remarks on live TV. The league office finally came to a harsh realization. Continuing to shield Griner was costing them more than it was worth. The money spoke, and Griner's behavior had become far too expensive to overlook. What's even more revealing is this: the suspension was made possible by a clause that's been sitting in the standard player contract all along. The WNBA always had the authority to act, they just didn't use it. Not until the backlash got too loud and the dollars started slipping away. That makes the delay even more outrageous, and the punishment all the more satisfying. Now, Griner's defenders are scrambling, then calling the suspension unfair, questioning the evidence, and insisting veteran players deserve more leeway. But none of that changes the facts. She was caught on camera making racist comments about the league's most visible star. There's no gray area. The video is crystal clear. No spin, no excuse, just undeniable proof. Clark's fans have been demanding accountability for weeks. They watched the WNBA investigate fake racism from Fever fans while completely ignoring blatant racism from one of its own stars. This suspension finally feels like real justice. You can feel the shift. Fans are breathing a sigh of relief. For the first time in a long time, it feels like the league is actually living up to the values it claims to stand for. And the message this sends, it's massive. No more special treatment, no more hiding behind past accomplishments. Every player, no matter how famous, is now on notice. That's the kind of accountability every professional league needs if they want credibility with fans, sponsors, and the public. Even the media is feeling the heat. Many outlets downplayed or completely ignored the story when it broke. Now, they're being forced to explain why they didn't speak out sooner. That gap between media coverage and fan expectations has never been been more obvious. The financial fallout for Griner is only beginning. Sponsorships are drying up, speaking gigs are getting canceled, and any future earning potential fading fast. This is what happens when public figures cross the line, especially when it's all caught on camera. This moment also rips the mask off the WNBA's so-called No Space for Hate campaign. They pushed that message hard when it was convenient, but when a real violation happened, they froze. The only reason they acted now, outside pressure and financial risk. That's not commitment, that's damage control. And let's not forget what brought Griner back to the US in the first place. A prisoner swap that cost the country a convicted arms dealer to turn around and attack a fellow American with racially charged language. That's next level ingratitude, and that's why this downfall feels like poetic justice. Other WNBA players are watching all this closely. The message is loud and clear. The league won't protect you forever. If you've been skating by on status, now's the time to rethink things. This culture shift, if it holds, could genuinely change the WNBA for the better, because consequences matter. The suspension also comes right as the league is entering major sponsorship and TV rights talks. Having Griner's controversy hanging over those negotiations was a risk they simply couldn't afford anymore. So yes, the business case finally won, and fans, they're loving it. Social media is full of praise for the league actually doing something for once. The WNBA earned back some trust with this move. It wasn't just the right decision morally, it was the smartest move they could have made financially. Public opinion turned against Griner the moment that video went viral, and no amount of PR spin could save her from the fallout. And now, we wait to see what comes next, not just for Griner, but for a league that's finally being forced to practice what it preaches. Brittney Griner may try to challenge the league's decision, but let's be honest, she doesn't have a strong case. The footage is undeniable, and the contract terms are crystal clear. Any legal fight would likely backfire, only drawing more attention to her actions and damaging her image even further. But this isn't just about one player, it's sending shockwaves through coaching staffs and front offices across the league. Teams are now realizing that the WNBA is finally serious about enforcing its conduct rules. Organizations that used to turn a blind eye to bad behavior from their star players are now reevaluating everything. The risk of protecting difficult personalities just became too high, and general managers are adjusting accordingly. And the stakes go beyond the US. Griner's comments don't just hurt her, they reflect poorly on American basketball as a whole. International partners and competitors are watching how this all unfolds. A strong, decisive response tells the world that the WNBA actually stands for something. That matters, especially after the backlash over the prisoner swap that brought Griner home in the first place. Now, the fan response? That's been telling. Many supporters had already lost faith in the league because of its silence. But this suspension is giving some of those fans a reason to hope again. It's not a total fix, but it might be the start of something better. The key now is consistency. If this is just a one-time move, the trust won't last. As for Griner herself, the emotional toll is probably enormous. She spent years being insulated by the league, even during major controversies, both at home and abroad. She was used to being untouchable. To suddenly find herself dropped by the very system that once shielded her, that has to sting. This is a major reality check, but the real impact could come from what happens next. Every player in the league is watching this unfold, trying to gauge how seriously the WNBA is taking its own standards. If this suspension becomes a precedent, not just a PR stunt, it could actually discourage future incidents. But if it turns out to be a one-off exception, the problems will persist and the league's credibility will take another hit. Sponsors haven't waited around to make up their minds. The backlash has been swift and decisive. Brands want no part of this mess. Companies can't afford to be tied to a racism scandal, especially when social media can turn it into a viral disaster in hours. There's no room for hesitation when millions of marketing dollars are on the line. And let's not forget what Caitlin Clark has endured through all this. She's tried to stay composed while taking heat from all sides. This league action, it's long overdue. It finally shows that her value is being recognized, not just as a basketball talent, but as a professional who deserves respect. She should have been protected from the beginning. Now at least she's getting that backing. But this story goes even even further. It's about what kind of culture professional sports want to build. Other leagues are watching the WNBA closely. If this becomes a model for how to address racism, it could inspire similar moves across the sports world. But if the response is weak, it sends a dangerous message that bad behavior is tolerable, as long as you're important enough. Even coaches are being put in a tough spot. They've had to juggle loyalty to their players with their own reputations. But now that the league has stepped in, coaches are beginning to distance themselves from Griner's actions. This suspension gives them the room to speak out without looking disloyal. Agents, team executives, and PR reps are all watching how this shakes out too. Because if the rules just change for Griner, they've changed for everyone. Griner's management team is now facing an uphill battle. Her image has taken a major hit, and that damage is going to follow her into every future negotiation. Any franchise considering her now has to weigh the controversy she brings, and that makes her more of a risk than an asset. This suspension has completely shifted her market value. Talks of retirement are already swirling. Let's be real. At her age, and with this scandal attached to her name, landing a fresh opportunity will be nearly impossible. This could mark the end of her basketball career. And for some, that feels like a fitting conclusion after years of questionable behavior. But perhaps the biggest blow isn't the suspension or the backlash. It's what this does to her legacy. Everything Griner accomplished on the court is now clouded by this one moment of racial hostility. Her career won't just be remembered for her stats or wins. It'll be remembered for this stain. She threw away a respected legacy for a burst of ugly, hateful emotion. And no, that trade-off wasn't worth it. When you compare Griner's treatment to that of other WNBA players, the double standard becomes impossible to ignore. Lesser-known players have been suspended for far less, and a lot faster. The league has protected Griner for years, but this time, her star power wasn't enough to shield her. Finally, we're seeing the league enforce its rules fairly. No exceptions. The investigation that led to her suspension was reportedly extensive. The league reviewed additional footage, interviewed players and officials who witnessed the incident, and reached a clear conclusion. This wasn't just a bad moment. It was intentional and racially charged. With that kind of evidence, no appeal is going to stick. The PR damage Griner caused the league is massive. The WNBA worked for years to build credibility with fans, sponsors, and media partners. One racist outburst put all that at risk. So yes, this suspension is partly about punishing her, but it's also about protecting the league's reputation from being destroyed by one player's actions. As for Griner's future, it might involve more than just sitting out games. Reports suggest the WNBA will require her to complete sensitivity training, community outreach, and issue public apologies if she ever wants to return. And for someone like Griner, who's long believed she's above accountability, that kind of public reckoning will be hard to swallow. But honestly, the most satisfying part of this entire saga is seeing accountability finally arrive. For years, Griner acted like the rules didn't apply to her. She carried herself with entitlement, disrespected the league's values, and capped it all off by going after the very player, Caitlin Clark, who's helping take the WNBA to new heights. And now, she's paying the price. This suspension is a clear message. No one is above the game. Brittney Griner just learned that actions have consequences. In the harshest way possible. The WNBA has made it clear, even its biggest stars can't escape justice forever. If you think justice was served, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because we're not done holding people accountable.